Heavy clouds hung over the city. The collapsed skyscrapers in the distance still leaned crookedly, and a foul, murky air filled every corner. The setting sun cast a strange blood-red glow. Tianchong City, like everywhere else, was a wounded city. 20-year-old Li Yi had just finished his part-time work and was making his way through the bleak streets of the old district, bag in hand. He slipped into a narrow alley, taking the shortcut he knew well. A sudden stench of rot hit him. He coughed and quickened his pace without looking back. He knew exactly what that smell meant. The lowest people in the city lived and died like rats in a gutter, rotting quietly in dark corners until the sanitation team came to clear them away. Li Yi sighed quietly to himself, wondering if his own luck would hold this time. His eyes were tired, but his resolve quickly hardened, and he walked faster. He arrived at Wangmen Residential Complex, a small, worn-down complex of 4 buildings deep in the old district. Upon entering, he found a crowd gathered around a group of investigators in the center courtyard. He overheard that the resident of Unit 701 in Building 4 had died horribly. Blood had poured out into the corridor. The lead investigator, Wang Jian, emerged from the stairwell. Though young, his eyes were unervingly sharp, faintly luminous even in the dim light. Another investigator reported to him quietly. The victim's body had been cut into more than 10 pieces, but the cause of death was ruled as suicide. Wang Jian nodded without surprise, as if he had seen far worse. A witness, a young man from across the hall, was brought forward. He claimed he had seen someone enter Unit 701 piece by piece the night before. Wang Jian grabbed him by the throat, stared into his eyes, and tossed him aside. He ordered his men to take the young man away, concluding he had gone mad from over-cultivating. The young man struggled and screamed that he wasn't crazy, that he had seen the killer clearly and Lu Li had not committed suicide. No one listened. He was dragged away. Li Yi watched in silence, decided it had nothing to do with him, and headed toward Building 1. He stopped in front of Unit 201, took a breath and knocked on the old door. After a long silence, the door opened. A dim yellow light spilled out, and a deep, low voice told him to come in. The living room was sparse. A sofa, a few wooden chairs, 2 shut bedroom doors. The yellow light made the space feel suffocating. Several people were already seated. A young man in a hoodie told Li Yi he was the last one. They had all been waiting. Li Yi's attention went to the figure seated in the chair across from him, half hidden in shadow. The person slowly raised their head, revealing a pair of unusually bright eyes that seemed to emit a faint glow, difficult to look at directly. The figure introduced himself as Old Crow. He confirmed Li Yi's name and asked him plainly why he wanted to take on a job this dangerous. Li Yi answered without hesitation. He needed money. Old Crow pressed him. Li Yi explained that his parents were silent ones, comatose for 6 years. The medical pods keeping them alive had broken down, and the repair cost was 50,000. Without the pods, they had 30 days left. Old Crow studied him for a moment, then accepted his reason and told him to sit. Once Li Yi was seated, Old Crow addressed everyone. He told them that if anyone wanted to leave, now was the time. In 10 seconds, he would begin. The room went silent. No one moved. Old Crow stood and began explaining the mission. At the same moment, the bedroom door opened and a suited man stepped out, locked the front door, and positioned himself in front of it like a wall. Old Crow said that 10 days ago, a building in the ruins district showed signs of something unusual. His team went in, several died. Only 2 ordinary people made it out. One went insane, the other barely survived. On the second attempt, he went in himself with his partner. His partner didn't come back. He barely escaped. But from those 2 expeditions, he had gathered 2 critical pieces of information. The first, there was very likely a strange object inside that building. The room erupted. Everyone stared in disbelief. Strange objects were treasures from another world, left behind after the Heavens Collapse event. Each one was priceless, capable of rewriting an ordinary person's fate and putting them on a path of cultivation no genius could match. The woman in the slip dress was skeptical. She pointed out that every strange object had an influence radius of at least 5 kilometers. Investigators would have detected it long ago. The hoodie man agreed. The whole story felt absurd to him. Old Crow calmly clarified, strange objects came in different grades. A fragment or a damaged one wouldn't necessarily set off detection. Finding something like that was still possible. He laid out the terms. Locate the object inside the building, and each of them would receive 100,000. Retrieve it, and he would pay 2 million per person. Immediately, the group began pushing back. The hoodie man wanted more money. The woman demanded half up front. Li Yi proposed a 50,000 deposit with 100,000 upon success. The massive man near 2 meters tall stood up and said the money was his regardless, or he'd put his fist through Old Crow's skull. The quiet man with glasses offered to handle everything himself in exchange for 30% of whatever Old Crow stood to gain. Old Crow stared at them all and said that if this weren't a safe zone, he would have killed every one of them. He compromised anyway. He settled on Li Yi's terms, 50,000 up front, 100,000 on success. No more negotiating. The hoodie man then asked about the second piece of information. Old Crow said it simply. Inside that building, ordinary people faced far less danger than cultivators. Whatever lurked in there actively targeted those who had practiced cultivation. That was precisely why he had recruited them. He told them to move out immediately. Li Yi stopped him with one last question. He wanted to know what kind of danger they were actually walking into. What was in that building that even cultivators couldn't handle? Old Crow paused at the door and answered in 2 words. The building was haunted. He walked out. Everyone froze. Beneath the yellowish light, a cold dread crept through the room. Searching for a possible strange object inside a haunted building, the task was daunting, to say the least. Money was never easy to earn. Li Yi sat quietly in the vehicle, heading toward the destination, and let out a silent sigh. He had no other choice. If there were any other way to earn 50,000 in such a short time, he would never have taken on something this dangerous. The car moved through the old district, rattling along the uneven roads. No one inside spoke. The atmosphere was heavy. The man in the hoodie, Zhang Kaiwen, broke the silence on his own, noting that the car had been going in circles and they had already passed this road once. He said that Old Crow was clearly being very cautious, and that made him start to believe the whole story might actually be true. He grinned and added that if a strange object really was in there, things were about to get very interesting. The lean man with glasses spoke up next with a calm smile. He suggested they introduce themselves since they would be working together. He said his name was Wei Li, a doctor at a small clinic in Tianchong City. He was here because his daughter was ill and he needed money for her surgery. Zhang Kaiwen grinned and said his name. He was from out of town, had borrowed from loan sharks and couldn't repay them, and had fled here. He was in this for the money and nothing else. The woman in the slip dress, Lu Yen, spoke seriously. She was a local with some talent for cultivation, and she wanted to take her first step. But cultivation required money, and her family had none. A normal job would take her 10 years to save up even 100,000, and by then she would be too old to start. She wanted to fight for herself now. The resolve and hunger behind her eyes were unmistakable. Li Yi said his name and noted that his situation had already been explained to Old Crow. Everyone had heard it, so he left it at that. All eyes then turned to the last member, the massive, broad-jawed man sitting with his arms crossed, muscles bulging, expression dead serious. He announced his name was Wang Hu, and he had come from Shangjiang. He told them not to compare themselves to him. He was only here because he had run a little short on spending money during his travels. In his eyes, the rest of them were mere background characters. Wang Hu, on the other hand, was destined for greatness, born to overturn the world. Everyone else went silent. The vehicle stopped. Before them stood a half-collapsed skyscraper, surrounded by warning tape and covered in signs urging people to stay away. The buildings nearby were equally devastated. Every structure broken and incomplete, as though something catastrophic had struck in a single instant. Li Yi stepped out and looked around. There was no one in sight. Abandoned cars sat rusting on the road, and wild grass had overtaken the surrounding wasteland. Few people came to the ruins district, not only because of the destruction, but because unknown dangers were said to lurk here. Only outlaws and cultivators were willing to linger in a place like this. A sharp, clear set of footsteps rang out from within the darkness of the building. A figure slowly emerged from the depths. A woman, judging by her voice, her tone ice-cold. She told Old Crow he was late. Old Crow explained in his low voice that he had taken a few detours to avoid any unexpected complications. The woman looked at the group and said 5 people was far too few. She said at least 10 were needed. 5 would barely make a ripple inside that building. Old Crow told her that investigator Wang Jian had been active in the old district, spotted at Wangmen residential complex, for reasons unknown. Because of that, he had decided to keep the group small to avoid exposure. He said that whatever was inside that building, caution was always the right call. The woman acknowledged it and said he had made the right call. 5 would have to do. They would try, and if it failed, they would find another group. Zhang Kaiwen stepped forward with a frown and said that the way she was talking, it sounded like failure wasn't allowed, and he wanted to know if that meant they would be silenced if they came back empty-handed. His words had barely left his mouth when something shifted in the darkness of the building. A pair of eyes seemed to light up within the black. A deep, resonant hum filled the air. Li Yi's head instantly rang with a violent buzzing. His vision went black. A wave of nausea surged through him. The sensation arrived fast and left fast. When he came back to his senses, he saw Zhang Kaiwen collapse to his knees on the ground, face drained of color. He retched violently, and blood poured steadily from his eyes, ears, and nose. Lu Yen stared in wide-eyed horror and whispered one word. "Eyewitness." Li Yi asked what that meant. She explained with a voice tight with fear and a trace of awe. To focus all spiritual power into the eyes and kill with a glance. That was a technique only someone who had truly entered cultivation could command. The woman in the darkness was no ordinary person. She had at minimum opened her spirit medium. Li Yi was stunned. He didn't know much about cultivation, but everyone in this era had heard of it. The spirit medium was the very first stage of cultivation, and it was a wall that stopped the vast majority of people cold. Because cultivation in this world was broken. For most people who attempted it, the result was severe illness, madness, or an agonizing death. And even those who survived the process found the progress unbearably slow. Li Yi knew of a relative's child who had spent 5 full years doing nothing but cultivating. Eating well, sleeping long, living off the family, and had achieved absolutely nothing. The family eventually concluded the child was probably not cultivating at all, and was simply freeloading. Such cases were everywhere. Spending years in pursuit of cultivation only to come away with nothing was common. The risks far outweighed the rewards, and it consumed enormous amounts of time, which was why most people had simply given up. The mysterious woman stepped fully out of the darkness. She was tall, dressed in a fitted outfit, a long ponytail reaching her waist. Her face was pale and cold, and her eyes were unlike anything normal. Her pupils had gone white, faintly glowing. She said calmly that the display just now was only a small lesson. She told them to watch their mouths, and warned that in the ruins district, if she truly wanted to kill them, there would be no trace left behind. She then instructed Old Crow to transfer the money and get them moving immediately. She said she would be watching from the shadows, and anyone who tried anything would not leave this place alive. With that, she turned and walked back into the building. Within moments, the darkness swallowed her completely. Zhang Kaiwen staggered to his feet, spat out a mouthful of blood and saliva, and muttered that she was a vicious woman. He said that for a second he genuinely thought his brain was going to explode, and that if that was what cultivation looked like, he was going to take out another loan just to try it. Wang Hu laughed loudly and said that the hit had been impressive. He announced he was starting to feel genuinely excited about this trip. Wei Li cleaned his glasses and remarked analytically that the eyewitness technique appeared to target the brain directly, a form of mental impact with no defense available to ordinary people. Only another cultivator who had opened their spirit medium could counter it. He wondered aloud what its maximum range was, and whether walls and structures could block it. Li stayed quiet and rubbed his still ringing head. He was shaken. He realized he had only been caught in the edge of it, not directly targeted. And even that had nearly floored him. If the woman had aimed at Zhang Kaiwan in earnest, he would have had no chance of surviving. Li thought to himself that calling this a warning felt like a heavy hand, and wondered whether it was the ruins district that made people reckless, or whether cultivators simply no longer saw ordinary people as worth holding back for. His phone vibrated. He checked it. 50,000 had just been deposited. The others received the same notification almost simultaneously. Old Crow told them the money was sent and it was time to move. He said he would relay additional information about the building through text messages once they were inside. Wang, who was already on his feet and striding toward the collapsed skyscraper without waiting for anyone. Zhang Kaiwan called after him and told him not to be reckless. Old Crow had said the building was haunted. The interior of the abandoned building was pitch black. Only where windows remained did any light filter through. The air was thick with the smell of rot and mold. From somewhere deep in the dead corridor came a faint, rhythmic dripping. The moment they stepped inside, an inexplicable chill settled over everyone, as though the temperature had dropped several degrees all at once. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the quiet echo of their own footsteps. Wei spoke as they walked, his voice calm and precise. He relayed Old Crow's intelligence. Their target was on the second basement level, originally a parking garage. Due to the building's damage, only 2 entry points remained: the eastern emergency stairwell and the elevator shaft in the B1 area. For them, he said, only one was realistic. The elevator shaft was out of the question. They were ordinary people, and climbing it would be too dangerous and too slow. He told everyone to memorize the escape route, because getting lost on the second basement level in the event of an emergency was as good as a death sentence. New information from Old Crow also indicated that danger would appear as early as the first basement level. But because they were ordinary people, it could most likely be avoided. The truly lethal threat was on the second level, and the closer they got to whatever the source was, the more dangerous it would become. Zhang Kaiwan's eyes lit up with an idea. He suggested they simply wander around the first basement level for a bit and then head back, a free 50,000 for doing almost nothing. Li immediately shut it down. He pointed out that the mysterious woman who had opened her spirit medium was almost certainly already watching them from the shadows. If they tried to slack off, they would likely be killed the moment they stepped outside. Lu Yen added quietly that she had heard cultivators who opened the spirit medium could perceive things ordinary people couldn't. If that was true, they were probably under surveillance the entire time. Zhang Kaiwan's idea wasn't going to work. Wang, who declared loudly that they were all spineless, and it was embarrassing to work alongside them. Reaching the second basement level was a gift from fate, a chance to claim a strange object. 2 million meant nothing compared to that. He said he would make the woman outside kneel before him and lick his shoes clean. No one argued. Deep down, who didn't want to change their fate? Zhang Kaiwan grinned and said Wang who was right. His life was worthless anyway. If he was going to gamble, he might as well go all in. 50,000 wouldn't change anything, but a strange object would make him a figure of consequence in this world. Lu Yen murmured that if she got a strange object and chose to hand it over, she could enter the Golden Academy and completely rewrite her future. Li felt his heart stir despite himself. They were right. The money would only solve the immediate crisis. His parents needed better medical pods and nutrition fluid to stay alive. The long-term costs were enormous. 50,000 was a drop in the ocean. And he had no skills, no connections, no cultivation talent to speak of. A strange object could change everything. But his reason held him back. He told himself that the strange object might not even exist. Only the danger lurking in the dark was certain. Greed would get him killed here for nothing. While they talked, the group had moved deep into the building and spotted the stairwell descending to the underground parking garage. Below, the darkness thickened like a pit with no bottom. Just looking at it stirred a quiet unease in all of them. Everyone switched on the flashlights Old Crow had prepared for them in advance. The beams cut through the black. After scanning the surroundings and finding nothing unusual, the 5 of them began their descent toward the second basement level. They moved carefully, Even their footsteps were deliberately softened, as though afraid of disturbing something hidden in the dark. Everything seemed calm. No danger presented itself. They reached the first basement level and kept moving without stopping. Old Crow had already searched this floor. There was danger here, but nothing of value. The real losses had come on the second level, and both previous expeditions had been forced to retreat with heavy casualties. Their mission started below. But as they continued down the stairs, Wang Hu, leading at the front, suddenly stopped. The flashlight beams converged ahead. There on the steps lay a corpse. Its skin was deathly pale, its neck rigid, its head tilted back at an unnatural angle. One arm was raised stiffly in the air, frozen mid-struggle, as though it had been desperately trying to crawl away from the parking garage below, only to be caught by something and die right there on the stairs. Wang Hu remarked flatly that the poor wretch had rotten luck, and stepped over the body without breaking stride. The others examined it briefly, carefully stepped around it, and followed. Then Wei Li spoke quietly. He said the body wasn't right. Zhang Kai, when told him it was just a corpse. Was he scared? Wei Li reminded them he was a doctor and had seen more corpses than any of them. He said he had looked at it carefully. There was no lividity, no signs of decomposition. That was deeply abnormal. And the position was wrong too. It didn't look like someone who had died on those stairs. It looked like someone had placed the body there from somewhere else. Zhang Kaiwen told him he should have said that sooner, then spun his flashlight back toward the stairs behind them. His face went stiff. The body was gone. Zhang Kaiwen stared and said that it had been right there, and now in the blink of an eye it had simply vanished. Everyone felt a cold wave pass through them. Li Yi's expression darkened. He said quietly that it probably wasn't a corpse at all. It was a ghost. Old Crow had said the building was haunted, and that was exactly why even cultivators hadn't dared to go deeper. They had most likely just had their first encounter. Lu Yen, after a brief moment of terror, felt something else rise in her. Excitement. She explained that ghosts had not existed in their world before the Heavens Collapse event. After it, the legends were proven real. But ghosts could only exist in specific areas because they required some kind of energy source to sustain themselves. Otherwise, they would simply dissipate. If ghosts were here, something was feeding them. And that source, she said, was very possibly a strange object. Wang Hu didn't hesitate. He said a filthy thing like that wasn't going to scare him off and marched straight toward the second basement level. Zhang Kaiwen grinned and said this was his one chance to turn his life around. Ghosts were nothing, poverty was scarier. He followed without looking back. Li Yi took a deep breath and went after them without hesitation. Lu Yen and Wei Li followed without delay either. They had come this far. Turning back was no longer an option. They entered the second basement level. What they found was nothing like anything they had imagined. The floor was blanketed in a thick layer of mud. From it grew patches of withered, yellowed grass that emitted a faint phosphorescent glow in the darkness, scattered like the ghostly lights seen floating above graves. And further in, several wooden structures stood half-collapsed, their design ancient and completely out of place, more like ruins of an abandoned village from another era than anything belonging to a modern building. The only reminder that this was still the same world were the outlines of long-buried cars half-swallowed by the mud. Zhang Kaiwen said they should split up. Whether they survived or found a strange object was down to each person's own ability, and walked off in one direction without looking back. Wang Hu surveyed the space, agreed, and chose his own direction. Li Yi hesitated and suggested that staying together might be safer. Wei Li smiled quietly and told him that was naive thinking. If no strange object was found, cooperation was fine, but the moment one appeared, the group would tear itself apart. Nobody wanted a knife in the back. Splitting up was better for everyone. At least it preserved a degree of dignity. He walked away without another word. Lu Yen said nothing, hesitated briefly, then went her own way. Within moments, the group of 5 had completely scattered into the dark. The second basement parking garage was vast. Li Yi moved alone through the mud-covered floor, body tense, eyes scanning everything around him. He thought to himself that even knowing this place was haunted and had already claimed lives, the others had still chosen to go it alone. They had made up their minds to gamble everything. Old Crow had played them masterfully, dangling that promise in front of people who had nothing left to lose. They had come in just wanting to earn a few tens of thousands. Now they were willing to throw their lives away. And even he, in a situation like this, couldn't stop himself from looking for the strange object. An opportunity like this might only come once in a lifetime. Everyone wanted to move forward too desperately. Li Yi swept his flashlight around as he wandered, searching without knowing what he was even looking for. He had never seen a strange object. He wouldn't recognize one. He told himself to stay calm, walk around a bit, then turn back before the danger appeared. Don't go too deep. Don't get lost. The money was enough. He couldn't throw his life away chasing something that might not even exist. What the others chose was their business. He slowed his pace and decided he had covered enough ground to justify the search. He would head back. He swept the flashlight left and right one last time. Then, from somewhere nearby in the dark, Wei Li's voice came through quietly. He said he had found something. He didn't know what it was, but it felt unusual. Anyone interested could make their way toward him. Wang Hu's voice responded immediately. He was coming. Zhang Kaiwen said to wait for him. Flashlight beams from several directions began converging toward the same point. Li hesitated, then decided to go take a look. Without any findings at all, he probably wouldn't get paid anyway. The five of them gathered at a single area, still spaced far apart, but all their flashlight beams pointed at the same thing. It was a slightly raised mound of earth, a grave already dug open. Broken fragments of tombstones were scattered nearby, along with the remnants of offerings. But the grave itself was deeply strange. It bore no resemblance to anything modern. It looked more like a freshly unearthed ancient tomb, something that had no business being here. Li Yi trained his flashlight on the mound and caught a glimpse of a faint halo of light surrounding it. The moment the beam shifted away, the glow vanished back into the dark. It wasn't his imagination. Something about that place was genuinely different. His heart, which had just settled, began hammering again. Could that be the strange object they had been talking about? He couldn't be certain, but it wasn't far. Getting closer would answer the question. He wasn't the only one thinking it. But no one moved, because Wei Li's flashlight wasn't pointed at the grave. It was pointed at the ground surrounding it, and what it revealed made everyone go still. From the mud around the mound, dead human arms protruded, twisted, deformed, caked in filth. The further toward the grave, the more of them there were. And worse, something beneath the mud was moving. Li Yi felt a chill cut through him. He had a strong instinct that setting foot in that area would trigger an attack none of them could survive. For ordinary people, the odds of making it back were almost zero. He also realized that Wei Li hadn't called them over out of goodwill. Wei Li simply didn't have the confidence to cross that zone alone and needed others to test the path for him. Wei Li confirmed it himself, calmly polishing his glasses. He said the path was right in front of them. The risk was real, but so was the reward. Turning back now would still get them the remaining 100,000. But they should think carefully before deciding. No one spoke. A brief silence fell over the group. They were hesitating and waiting to see who would move first. Meanwhile, on the ground floor of the building, the tall woman stood motionless in an abandoned room, eyes closed, utterly still. She had been in that position for some time. Then a faint smile crossed her lips. She said they had safely reached the core area, as expected. Based on the sounds she could track, all five were still alive. The theory had been proven. Ordinary people were not targeted by the fierce ghosts wandering below. Old Crow's low voice came from beside her. He explained that because they had no spirit medium, they couldn't see the ghosts, and what you couldn't see couldn't frighten you and wouldn't target you. For cultivators like them, even entering the first basement level would draw attacks from countless fierce spirits. The second level was swarming with them. Going in by force would be suicidal. The woman said it was almost enviable. Those five were surrounded by unseen horrors, yet walked through them without a trace of fear, simply because they couldn't perceive any of it. That was the only reason they had reached the core so easily. But she added that avoiding the ghosts was only the first obstacle. What was down there had already formed into an earth-binding spirit. Getting too close would be fatal. Old Crow considered it and said the group was sharp. They were all cautious people. They would probably just take a look from a distance, photograph the location, and leave. The woman agreed. A single photograph was all she needed to pinpoint the exact position. After that, she would gather some allies and move in fast. Getting the object wouldn't be difficult. Then she made a sharp sound of alarm. Old Crow asked what was wrong. Her eyes snapped open. She said that Wang, who was trying to grab whatever the earth-binding spirit was holding. His actions had triggered a full uprising of every restless soul in the area. They needed to get out of the building immediately, or they would be caught in it too. Old Crow's expression shifted. He said that meant all 5 of them were as good as dead. The 2 of them evacuated without another word, and Old Crow sent word for the rest of his people to clear the area. Back in the second basement level, Wang, who was already charging forward. He leaped ahead, landing precisely on a spot of ground. One that turned out to be a car buried beneath the mud, giving him a solid surface to push off from. He used the submerged vehicles as stepping stones, moving rapidly toward the lone grave. But his advance had already set off a terrible chain reaction. Agonized wails began echoing through the dark. Twisted, contorted bodies writhed up through the soft mud, mouths open in expressions of suffering, all converging toward Wang Hu. The mud-caked arms that had been protruding from the ground began swaying like grass in wind, grasping at anything within reach. Wang Hu cursed loudly at what he was seeing and leaped again, narrowly avoiding a reaching arm, but his luck ran out. The next parking space was empty beneath the mud. No car to land on. His massive frame sank in up to the waist. The moment he slowed, the bodies in the surrounding mud surged toward him. Within seconds he was completely surrounded, the writhing forms threatening to drag him under entirely. He roared at himself to move, every muscle in his body straining, survival instinct unleashing a strength that defied reason. Wang Hu tore himself free of the mud and hauled himself onto the roof of a nearby buried car. But the danger hadn't passed. More bodies were surging toward him now. At that moment, Wei Li moved. He stepped forward through the soft mud at the fastest pace he could manage, making straight for the lone grave, using the chaos Wang Hu had created as his window. Zhang Kaiwen swore under his breath, stripped off his shoes, and pushed forward as well. He wasn't going to let this chance pass. 3 people were now gambling with their lives. Li Yi stood at the edge, thinking fast. His path still had buried cars to step on. The bodies in the mud nearby had all been drawn toward Wang Hu. The route looked passable, at least to the grave. What waited at the grave, whether the strange object was real, whether he could make it back. None of that had an answer. He didn't stop to find one. He ran. He thought to himself he wanted to move forward too.